Did you know Ukraine just shocked the world with a move so calculated, so precise, and so devastating that even the United States didn't expect this move against Iran? This wasn't a missile launch or a battlefield victory. What Ukraine quietly did has permanently shattered Iran's most powerful weapon and left Russia's entire Middle East strategy in ruins. Stay with me, because this story has three explosive layers that will completely change how you see the Middle East forever. First, how Ukraine flipped the entire math of asymmetric drone warfare on its head with cheap interceptor technology. Second, the devastating boomerang that Russia and Iran built with their own hands and now regret. And third, why this single move has redrawn the entire security map of the region and left Moscow and Tehran in full panic mode. By the end of this video, you'll understand why nothing in the Middle East will ever be the same again. If you want the real unfiltered story behind these shocking headlines, stay with me until the end. Hit subscribe right now and turn on notifications for nation-states news so you never miss the truth. For years, Iran has dominated the Middle East. With one brutally simple playbook, flood the region with cheap, disposable suicide drones. The star of that strategy is the Shahed 136. Each one costs between $20,000 and $40,000 to build. Not sophisticated, not precise, but terrifying in sheer numbers. Here's where the math becomes insane. Every time a Gulf country tried to defend itself, it had to fire back with American Patriot missiles or THAAD interceptors. One single shot costs $4 million. Read that again. Iran spends $40,000. The defender spends $4 million. A 100-to-1 cost advantage. Iran didn't need to win militarily. They just needed to keep launching. The math alone was a weapon. Every wave of drones wasn't just an attack. It was an economic invoice that drained budgets, rattled populations, and quietly handed Tehran massive leverage at every negotiating table. And for a long time, nobody had a credible answer. That same deadly strategy was turned against Ukraine. For 4 straight years, Russia and Iran sent wave after wave of Shahed drones into Ukrainian cities, night after night, city after city. The goal wasn't just destruction. It was to exhaust, demoralize, and bankrupt Ukraine's air defenses using the exact same cost equation. But Ukraine didn't have $4 million missiles to waste. Instead, under fire and under sanctions, Ukrainian engineers turned desperation into innovation. They built something that would soon flip the entire game, and that moment arrived in March 2026. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky launched a low-profile diplomatic tour across the Gulf. No flashy press conferences, no grand announcements, just quiet meetings, handshakes, and flights between Riyadh, Doha, and Abu Dhabi. Within days, the results were historic. One after another, Ukraine signed landmark 10-year defense agreements with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. These were not temporary contracts or pilot programs. These were decade-long strategic partnerships covering joint production facilities, full technology transfer, and deep integration of Ukraine's battle-tested defense industry with the massive financial power of the Gulf. Think about what that actually means. Saudi petrodollars, Qatari sovereign wealth funds, and UAE technological infrastructure are now flowing directly into Ukraine's defense sector. The country Russia tried to economically strangle is suddenly being bankrolled by three of the wealthiest energy exporters on earth. But Ukraine didn't stop at signing papers. They moved immediately from diplomacy to action. Concurrent with Zelensky's tour, over 228 elite anti-drone specialists, carefully selected from Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, the General Staff and the SBU Intelligence Service, were quietly deployed across Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Jordan. These were not advisors sitting in air-conditioned rooms. These were operators embedded directly into active defense networks, running real-time anti-drone missions around the most critical energy infrastructure in the region. And then the world saw the proof. BBC cameras, independently verified by multiple defense analysts, captured Ukrainian operators in the Persian Gulf, successfully intercepting and destroying Iranian-made Shahed drones using Ukraine's own low-cost systems. Not American Patriot missiles, not THAAD batteries, just Ukrainian-built FPV interceptor drones guided by acoustic sensors, mobile radar arrays, and advanced electronic warfare support. Let that sink in. The same Shahed 136 drones that had terrorized Ukrainian cities for 4 straight years were now being hunted and blown out of the sky in Iran's own backyard by the very people who had spent 4 years perfecting the art of killing them. Here's how the system actually works and why it is so devastating. When a Shahed drone lifts off from Iranian territory or a proxy launch site, Ukrainian-established signal intelligence networks detect it almost instantly. Acoustic sensors pick up the unique engine signature that Ukrainian engineers have memorized after thousands of nights under attack. Mobile radar systems triangulate the exact trajectory in real time. Electronic warfare equipment immediately begins GPS spoofing, feeding the drone false navigation data and disorienting it before it can reach its target. If the electronic warfare doesn't bring it down, the FPV interceptors finish the job. These small, lightning-fast AI-assisted drone killers cost between $2,000 and $6,000 each. They hunt the $40,000 Shahed like raptors, closing the distance rapidly and destroying the target with kinetic impact before it can cause any damage. This is not a single weapon. It is a complete, layered, defensive ecosystem, distributed, redundant, nearly impossible to overwhelm. Ukraine perfected it under the harshest conditions imaginable. Constant Russian and Iranian bombardments, severe sanctions, and limited resources. Now they have packaged that hard-won expertise and exported it to the Gulf. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense has already confirmed they can scale production to 2,000 of these defensive FPV interceptors per day once full funding is secured. And thanks to the new Gulf agreements, that funding is no longer a problem. Sovereign wealth, money is pouring in. Production lines are expanding rapidly. The shield is growing stronger by the week. Iran's cheap drone math no longer works. The cost equation has been reversed permanently. What used to be a 100-to-1 advantage for Tehran has now become a devastating economic trap for them. The footage from the Gulf tells the whole story. Night after night, Iranian Shahed drones are intercepted mid-flight over Saudi and Emirati airspace. The images are crystal clear, independently verified, and broadcast around the world. For Iran, this is not just a tactical failure. It is the public, humiliating collapse of their most prized strategic asset. The very weapon they spent billions developing and refining over the past decade. And the most painful part, the people operating these interceptors learned their craft by surviving 4 years of the exact same drones that Russia and Iran kept improving and sending against them. This is the current situation on the ground right now. Real operators, real results, real footage, and it is only the beginning. Stay with me, because what comes next is even more explosive. Now let's hear the opposing version, straight from Tehran and Moscow. Iranian officials and state media are calling this nothing more than a desperate Ukrainian PR stunt. They insist the Shahed 136 remains an unstoppable, cost-effective weapon that cannot be defeated at scale by cheap FPV toys. According to Tehran, a few intercepted drones mean absolutely nothing. Their strategy of flooding the region with low-cost swarms is still fully intact, and the Gulf states continue to live under constant psychological and economic pressure. Moscow echoes the exact same line. Russian generals and Kremlin spokespeople claim Ukraine's interceptor systems are heavily overhyped and totally dependent on Western intelligence and technology. They argue that real battlefield results over time will once again prove the Shahed's superiority. Nothing has changed in the long-term balance of power, they declare. The leverage still belongs to the axis of resistance. That's exactly what they want you to believe. Stay with me, because this is where the story stops being just military news and becomes one of the most devastating geopolitical boomerangs in modern history. Let that sink in for a second. Russia and Iran didn't just lose a few drones in the Gulf. They handed Ukraine the exact blueprint to destroy their entire strategy, and they did it with their own hands. For years, Russia received first-generation Shahed 136 drones from Iran. They didn't just use them against Ukrainian cities. They studied every weakness, reverse-engineered the design, upgraded the navigation systems, and strengthened the anti-jamming capabilities. Then they sent the improved versions back to Iran. Moscow's logic was simple. A stronger Iran creates more chaos for the United States and Israel. A more lethal proxy in the Middle East keeps Washington distracted. Read that again. Russia believed it was turning Iran into a sharper weapon. In reality, Russia spent 4 years giving Ukraine the world's most advanced real-world training program against an increasingly sophisticated drone threat. Every upgraded Shahed that crossed Ukrainian skies became another data point, another acoustic signature, memorized another flight pattern, dissected another vulnerability catalogued. Ukraine didn't just survive the attacks, they mastered them under fire. Now the irony hits like a sledgehammer. The same Ukrainian operators who survived 4 years of those upgraded Russian-Iranian drones are now standing in the Persian Gulf, using the very same technology to hunt and destroy Shaheds in real time, on camera, in front of the entire world. This is the boomerang of the century. Russia and Iran literally built the machine that is now dismantling their own credibility. But the damage goes far deeper than lost drones. For Iran, this is not merely a tactical setback, it is the structural collapse of their entire regional doctrine. Tehran never planned to win a conventional arms race against the Gulf states. What they built instead was a strategy of deniable chaos proxy networks, cheap drone swarms, and the constant threat of hitting Saudi oil fields, Emirati ports, and Strait of Hormuz shipping lanes without ever formally declaring war. Plausible deniability paired with undeniable economic pressure. That entire architecture only worked because the threat was credible. Now, that credibility is evaporating in real time. Every Shahed intercepted mid-flight over Gulf airspace is a public demonstration that Iran's signature weapon no longer reaches its targets. The cost-benefit equation has flipped completely. Iran still, in summary, Ukraine didn't just survive the war, they have completely flipped the board. What Putin and Iran created to destroy Ukraine is now turning around and shattering their own strategies. Iran is watching its most prized weapon shot down in public. Russia has lost its multi-billion-dollar arms export market. And the Middle East has just experienced a genuine geopolitical earthquake. This is not an ordinary defense deal. This is a historic moment. A country that was once besieged and dismissed as weak has now become the strongest security exporter for the richest nations on earth. The center of power in the Middle East has shifted. The rules of the game have changed forever. The new technological axis, Ukraine and the Gulf bloc, is replacing the old axis of Moscow and Tehran. And in the next 10 years,